welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with my special guest, Ted Okay, I'm going to butcher the last name if you don't say it yourself.
McLyman, Lyman with a Mick.
Okay, see? I was completely butchered that. Now, you were just talking, you do a little bit of everything, and you're like me. You can't get bored because then things get dangerous. So
Exactly.
So where did you start? Let's put it that way.
Well, I grew up in upstate New York, around the Syracuse area, and graduated from Colgate University, and I learned very early that they have a lot of snow and it's very cold there. So I needed to get out and find some sunshine, and I decided to do it via the United States Marine Corps, where I was commissioned after graduation, and the Marine Corps had the foresight to send me to Hawaii, where I saw primary colors for the first time and sunglasses and sunscreen. And that's when I was first introduced to doing crazy things with money.
Okay, so did you, after the Marine Corps, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Did you do the book first, or did you start doing crazy things with money right after?
In the Marine Corps, as a young officer, one of my responsibilities was to take care of my young Marines and sailors that were doing just incredibly, well, you can imagine. Anything you can imagine that would be done with money that was dysfunctional, they found a way to do it.
Of course.
And as a result of doing that, and as an undergraduate, I took a lot of economics and finance stuff, so I was kind of the designated guy to go figure that out. But at that time, I really became interested on how bad or dysfunctional money behavior was impacting people's lives. Performance, retention, domestic problems, substance abuse, this, that, and the other thing. Well, as a captain, I actually wanted to get out of the Marine Corps, and guess what? They wouldn't let me, but they said, we'll send you to graduate school. So I picked up my first graduate degree at Pepperdine University, and my payback for that was teaching economics at the Naval Academy, which was wonderful. But there I found out it takes really smart young people to really screw up money. And teaching economics, I was teaching traditional economics. It just assumes that we're all rational and we'll figure it out with our money and it's okay. Well, what I found is the behavior in the classroom was so different than what was happening in the real life. And we were finding that our graduates were losing their commissions and being thrown out of the service through bad money decisions. So we started working then, and started getting research and doing some things on why we think and feel about money the way we do. From there, I did some normal Marine Corps things, built the Marine Corps financial management schoolhouse and program, and then picked up another degree in instructional performance technology because I really wanted to figure out how people perform. And then toward the end of my career, ended up as an aide to the Secretary of the Navy for Financial Management. And there I worked with the House and the Senate and the staffers. And there I found that politicians really know how to do money in strange ways, and particularly other people's money. Then from there I became a financial advisor.
One moment. Let me try to get the dog settled. Joys of working from home right now?
I get it. If you want to start over again, it's all right with me. Or we can cut that out.
We can cut, yeah. Darby, stop. I know someone's here. Be quiet. I'm going to have to put you in the garage.
Well, at least you have a companion during the lockdown.
Oh, I have actually 3 of them.
I get you.
There we go. One moment. I do apologize. Like I said, joys of being locked down.
I get it.
Okay, so before the dog was barking.
I think I was working with the House and the Senate.
Yes, you were. You've done so many interesting things. It's not even funny. I mean, working with government to improve something within the military is awesome.
Yeah, and it was to be very candid, it was a love-hate relationship because I went there, very naive and wide-eyed about how things work, and then became a little bit skeptical, and I think I left as a cynic. It's just it's a fascinating place, and I don't think unless you work there, you really understand. Well, I don't know if anybody really understands how that process works. And when you're dealing with budgets within anywhere in the federal government, the numbers are so incredibly large that I think it's beyond the ability of humans to actually comprehend what is going on. So it's an interesting issue.
I mean, okay, in film, because I do film, I see the numbers go up to $100 million. I'm like, that's astronomical. But now you're in the government and you're looking at billions.
Oh yeah, $100 million is a footnote error.
Yeah, that's not even nothing to them. I'm like,
no.
I can't comprehend 100 million. I would never be able to comprehend 100 billion.
Oh yeah, and you can't even count it. So, but that leads to what I got into about working with people and money is the ability of humans to comprehend not only numbers but the magnitude of numbers is very limited, and this kind of piqued my interest in why I got into writing books about this. The Discover Your Money Temperament, A Common Sense Guide to Financial Security is my current book, but it's the third in a series on people and money. And what I wanted to do, and this was a result of working with hundreds of clients as a fully licensed financial advisor, that I realized very early that my job was to identify and manage behavior, not money. And that's really what the crux is. But we've got a system that doesn't go that way. Our level of financial literacy in the United States, in my opinion, is abysmal. We just don't teach this stuff. We just assume that you grew up and you're 18 or something, or you get your first job and you're going to kind of figure it out, but it doesn't work that way. And we just don't do that.
No, we need to, but it doesn't work that way at all. I mean, I tell my daughter that all the time. She's 17 now. She's getting ready to graduate next year. I'm like, I have taught you what I could about money, but we need to go back to balancing a checkbook.
Yeah, or what is a checkbook?
Yeah, that would
be. She probably works with electronic money and probably has never balanced one. But you reach a very, very important point, and this is one of the reasons I got very frustrated with the financial services committee industry and the financial literacy industry because we don't teach this stuff. I was never really introduced to personal finance in school. At Colgate, I had to demonstrate I could swim 25 meters in a pool to graduate, but they could care less if I could balance a checkbook. I doubt your daughter was ever introduced to financial literacy in high school. And it's kind of this Darwinian, you'll figure it out, I hope it's okay, but if it is okay, then we're here to help you. That's not the way it should work.
No, it's getting to the point where, okay, in high school, we assume everyone knows how to manage money. Well,
yep.
You don't know how to manage money in high school unless you're working a job, and then it's, hey, mom and dad's paying the bills, I can take this paycheck and blow it on whatever silly stuff.
Oh yeah, or I thought I was making, $10 an hour. I worked 40 hours. I did the math. What's the stuff they're taking away from me? What's this tax stuff and Social Security? Wait a minute, I've only got this left? Somebody's robbing me. We just don't get it. And what we're talking here is why I started writing the books. And the new book really gets into this. And I really divide it into two problems. First one, I wanted to write a book that is designed for people that will never buy a book about money. Never buy a book on economics, never buy a book on financial literacy, but they know they probably should. And I wanted to write it in such a way that it's a narrative. I base it on a trip to the mall and how the mall, works on your head and conspires against you to have you spend money and the decisions you take and why they can be so consequential. And it's based on a composite of working with hundreds of clients over the years and myself doing incredibly stupid stuff with money that my wife still keeps a logbook and breaks it out at the appropriate time. But the bottom line is the premise that I work with is that we as humans are just not hardwired to work well with money, and that's our biology. Our biology evolved over eons to keep us alive in the forest, but not at the mall. Our default is to stay alive and pass on the genes, not do taxes, read the small print on credit cards. The next piece is our belief system. Our belief system of money is established by mid-adolescence, and it's a function of our family, but also our peer group. So here's something that's kind of scary. That means that a lot of the non-conscious things you think and feel about money were established by the time you were in middle school. And they're still floating around in your brain, and they're influencing, on some of your buying choices, which means if you still need a starter jacket or something like that, it's still kind of there. And then the last piece is our culture. Our culture is our microculture, which is our family, neighborhood, and school, but then a broader culture, maybe the region you live in, your state, and the country. And cultural pressures have incredible influences on buying choices and buying decisions, and the United States is known as a consumer culture, and my gosh, we live up to that on a daily basis. So that's the first problem I felt we had to deal with was number one, nobody's talking about this. If you take a course in personal finance or economics, they talk about, number one, you're rational. You make rational decisions. You're always going to take the maximum advantage to you. And I knew that was ridiculous because I used to teach it and watch the behavior. But the other piece is we're not teaching people, if you are fortunate enough to have taken a course in finance or personal finance, consumer finance or whatever, they always seem to talk about stuff. It's tactical. This is a checkbook. This is how you balance a checkbook. These are products and services and activity. And they assume that everybody is the same way with money, that there are no behavioral differences. And that's not true. Mm-mm. But we try to force you into this one box, which is a one-size-fits-all approach, and it should be a one-size-fits-you approach. And I talk about that at length in the book.
Let's see, 2008, I was fortunate enough I had the bright idea. I wanted to learn how to do taxes.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So I've always been good with numbers. So I was like, learning how to do taxes would be easy. Yeah, no. The way they teach it is if you either get it or you don't. Well,
right.
No. You have to teach it to make it sense to the person that you're teaching. And if you have a classroom full of 20 to 40-year-old people that's never did taxes before, you can't assume we all know how to do it because we all go to tax preparers, right?
Exactly. And it's not a natural behavior. Most people are not interested in doing what you did. And believe it or not, a lot of people are just not really into numbers. I mean, it's the way our brains work. Mm-hmm. And it became very obvious to me that I was a keynote at the National Foundation for Financial Literacy a few years back, and I started talking about the behavioral piece, and everybody looked at me like I was in the wrong room because they're more concerned with, this is my new software. This is how you use X. This is how you can be more efficient and effective in finding a mutual fund, where they're missing the point. If you don't know the basics of how you naturally think and feel about money, and you're probably different than the people around you, you're going to have problems with money. I found it very fascinating working with clients, particularly when I met with a client family. I'd always make sure I had all the interested parties there in the room, at least for the initial meeting. And it was amazing how different they were with money. One was really into the process, the other could care less. One was tracking every dollar, the other person didn't know where they came from. And it was obvious there at that point that there were some distinct differences on how people think and feel about money. So after the last drawdown, which was the 2009 collapse, I wrote my first book, and it was primarily for my clients to give them a roadmap from a behavioral perspective to help them navigate what was going on. Well, this year, I knew we'd have some problems. The economy was going nuts. I mean, think about it. If you were thinking where you were in January compared to where you are today, you never would have believed this could be possible.
No.
I mean, we've been smacked in the side of the head by a black swan. And a black swan is an unanticipated, consequential event that nobody thought could happen, but it did, and it turns everything upside down. And then after the fact, we think, well, that's obvious. We should have known about this. Well, the reality is we as humans have this brain that is incredibly powerful. And if you put your two fists together and put them together in front of your face, that's about the size of your brain. And it does amazing, amazing things. But to keep it simple, I like to say you've got a thinking brain and a feeling brain, and your feeling brain is in charge. Your feeling brain is primitive, it's automatic, it's non-conscious, it keeps you alive. That's what its function is primarily. Then you've got this newer thinking brain that's only been around for a relatively short period of time compared to the rest of your brain biology. And that's where you do your thinking, and that's deliberate. It takes time. It's focused, and the two come together to keep you alive. Well, the default is your feeling brain. 95 to 99% of all spending decisions are automatic, non-conscious, and emotional.
Yes.
We think we're rational with our money, but generally we're not. And I use the analogy like if you commute to work and you drive your own car, you don't get in a car in a thinking, rational mindset to say, I'm going to follow the directions to where I work in an engineering point of view, with very analytical, I'm going to drive 200 meters, take a left, drive for 15 minutes, take a right, apply pressure. No, we get in the car, and in most cases, if it's the same route, you're not even aware how you got there until something happened. And it's the same thing with our money. Well, the feeling brain is the default. It's lazy. And here's something else that makes it really important. It's laced with this neurotransmitter called dopamine. And dopamine is a feel-good anticipation, I'm going to have a great time drug, if you will. So our lazy brain doesn't want to think. It would rather be conserving energy and not have to worry about it. And then it's being laced with this dopamine, and it happens non-consciously. So when you're online and that picture shows up with Google because you were surfing the net at one time and you were looking at some kind of piece of clothing, and it's going to pop up on your screen every time you're online until you either get rid of it or buy it. It's when you're walking through the mall and you're taking in the sights and the sounds and the feels and the smells of the entire environment, which is a shopping environment, that makes you feel primed to spend, and your feeling brain says, let me at it. And you've already spent the money before you're even in the mall. And that's what I try to convey in this presentation, in my book, that we as humans are constantly being conspired against by our biology, our belief set, and our culture to spend money on things we probably don't really put a lot of thought into, we may or may not need, but it's always emotional and often driven by our lazy feeling brain that is hopped up on dopamine. Welcome to America.
Yes, exactly. And then you have these shopaholics that go a step further with spending money that they really don't need the stuff. They just have an impulse to buy stuff.
Oh, yeah. Or spending money they don't have, which is even worse. Well, and then here's the other cultural factor that we need to bring in, and I address this in the book also, is we've taken these folks, the whole concept of celebrity and reality shows. I've never seen a reality show on two boring people that are living within their means, that are on paper financially independent in a modest house and don't do much. That doesn't sell a lot of, scripts.
No.
That's Warren Buffett. What we do like to follow is the celebrity, the athlete, the movie star, the artist. And what we don't realize that most of these folks are financial basket cases. They spend emotionally. They spend because they feel the culture says they should have a certain image. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book with J. Alexander Martin, who was one of the founders of the FUBU Corporation, about his behavior in working through this. And he's got it together right now, but there was a time he burnt through about $8 million in about 10 years just living the lifestyle he thought people expected him to live. And we started working together, and we got that under control. But what it comes down to is our feeling brains on money is a dangerous concept. So I was documenting all of this, and it was obvious that we were having some real challenges. And then I started finding from a lot of my older clients, they had children that were coming out of college and high school or just getting married and starting their lives, and they were doing ridiculous things with money. And they were very frustrated because some of these folks were quite successful and living within their means and quite frugal, but their kids were out of control. And we started realizing, and they were asking me for advice, and I said, I need to put a document in somebody's hands that makes it easy to read, to understand how they think and feel about money without being intrusive or an academic book or ridiculous. They'd never read it. And that became Discover Your Money Temperament. Mm-hmm. That was all in part one. Part two is the solution. And it was one thing to say, okay, we're doing all this crazy stuff, but how do you fix it? And what I developed, which I call is the money behavior system, and that's part two of Discover Your Money Temperament. And it's just an easy 5-step process to kind of figure out where you are with money and what you do with it to get you ready to do consequential spending. One of the things I have the greatest problem with the financial services industry and the financial literacy industry, they just say make a plan and go execute it. But they never get into the front end. Well, first thing I said was the rules of money have changed markedly since I was in college, and the rules of money for you and your daughter are very different than they were just a few years ago. Just look at the pandemic. So the first thing I said, money has gotten too sophisticated, too complicated. There's too much information. It's moving too fast. So it's even hard to get your head around it. So a lot of people just shut down and do nothing. The other thing, the reality, and if you're going to drive anything home with your daughter, I would say this. She is self-employed. She doesn't know it yet. Everybody in today's economy is self-employed. And I don't care where you work. What it means is that your livelihood is dependent on, you've got to have a different outlook on how you exchange your talents and skills and knowledge in the workplace for compensation, because there can be an event that you have no control over that can turn your economic life upside down. The pandemic's a great example. Or it could be a change in technology. You work a lot in the film industry. The film industry is being revolutionized by technology. Mm-hmm. It could be the skill sets that you had when you started your job are no longer necessary, and you can be replaced by somebody at half the price, or your entire job can be outsourced to a third world where there's some very bright people that work at a third the cost, and you're out of work. So I think it's incredibly important for everybody to have the mindset that you today are self-employed, which means that you're the CEO of you. And you need to have a focus on running your company, which is you, which means at the end of the day, you're living a lifestyle that you can sustain, and at the end of the month, you've got enough money left over that you can start building wealth. And wealth is profit in a company. Well, profit to you is how you generate wealth, and that's what's left over after everything else is spent, and we don't talk about this. So to begin with, you're in the business of you. Next thing is you need to sit down and clarify your values. I call this your money values. What I mean by this is these are the things that you feel are important to you in life, that define who you are, that you want to move towards, and they cost money. And it's not usually stuff. It's not usually cars and houses and eating out. It's usually something more important than that. It's usually family and legacy. But the kicker here is when I talk to people about values, then I ask them, show me your checkbook and show me your calendar. And I'll tell you what your values are based on your spending patterns and how you spend your time. I'm not judging, but we as humans, we're not real good at long-term planning. And, usually if we can plan to Friday, we're in pretty good shape. So what happens is we always think there's another tomorrow and we got time to make things happen. When in reality with money, you've got to start early. So values are incredibly important. Next piece, I call it money temperament. And that's this is chapter 6, I think. Money temperament is what we talked about before. It's just how you naturally think and feel about money. It's unique to you. It's a function of your unique biology, your unique belief set with money, and your unique culture. And that resides in your feeling brain, and that's your default with money. Then we need to talk about money knowledge. when I say money knowledge, and most people, they first think about technical training. That's part of it, but it's more than that. It's also how you process information. You said when you were taking your tax course, there were people in there that were really number-oriented, and some people weren't. That's what I mean by money knowledge. It's learning modality or learning style. Are you a visual learner? Are you an auditory learner? Are you tactile? Do you have to touch it? Do you like to process-oriented? Are you a numbers person? Well, how you naturally like to take in information and learn impacts how you relate with money issues. So when you're sitting down with a financial advisor or a coach or just trying to figure out money, if you're a visual person, you want to look at pictures and graphs. If you're an auditory person, you want it explained to you. If you're a tactile person, you want to take it apart and play with it and look at it. The problem we have in the financial industry, most of the people that gravitate to the financial industry, accountants, that kind of thing, are numbers-oriented, and they tend to process information different than the people they're working with, and that can cause a problem. So I think it's important to understand how you process information. Now, those three elements, your money values, your money temperament, and your money knowledge are the three elements that are critical to financial success, but guess what? We do not address this at all in the traditional financial planning process. We just assume everybody's alike. And here's something fascinating. You know, we accept the differences in every other activity in our life. If you're an athlete, or if you're gonna try to get in shape or start a diet, you always try to start that fitness regimentation or that diet in a way that fits with you, your lifestyle, and your behavior. You look for a coach or somebody to hold you accountable that knows who you are, your capabilities and limitations. But I ask you, why don't we do that with money? We don't. We just assume everybody's rational. You're going to figure it out. All I've got to do is give you enough information, and you'll take the right decision. And we know that's not right. So I'm on a quest to get us talking about financial literacy from, I call it the VTK perspective, values, temperament, knowledge perspective from behavior. Once you have your behavior figured out, your temperament, once you codify your values, you understand how you think and feel about money, you know how you process information, then sit back and develop a strategy. And your money strategy is at 30,000 feet looking down of where you want to go, kind of a general idea where you want to go to, how you're going to make it happen. And then the last step is the money action plan, which is traditional financial planning. And I got very frustrated as a financial advisor that we were not doing that. So I decided to take action and write a book about it.
Yeah, financial planning, a lot of us, actually 98% of America doesn't do financial planning. Who does your financial planning? A lot of your investment bankers. Why? Because they get it.
Yep.
Otherwise, the normal population, we plan for Friday.
Exactly. And sometimes not that well.
No. I mean, a lot of us don't even have money to go out on Friday because we didn't.
Right, but exactly. You've identified the problem right on. And as you watch your daughter, who's 17, who's starting to see the pressures of becoming a young adult and seeing how people are spending money and where money's going and the priorities, that's the reality. Unfortunately, a lot of people never break out of that 17-year-old mold, and they're now 50 or 60, and they're still behaving the same way, and then they wonder why they don't have anything.
Exactly.
Well, that's an issue.
I have a family member that's retired now, didn't plan for retirement at all, and they want people to take care of them because they didn't plan for anything. I'm like, how did we have to take care of you when you should have been planning since you've been working?
Boy, you bring up a huge point. And this is, again, with human behavior, that when things are good, we take credit for it. It's called the endowment bias. That when things are doing well, we take credit for it, that we're smart, we figured it out. But when things fall apart, we tend to become victims. Well, it's awful hard because the way we're wired to get somebody to think that far in the future, the consequences of bad decisions, but they're absolutely accountable and responsible. And that's when I go back to the concept of being self-employed. If you're self-employed, you are accountable and responsible for every decision you take, but also fail to take. And that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people.
It's hard for, I see it within my family. We have I'm better than you because I know how to budget my money, and I don't have money because I didn't know how to budget, so it's up to you to take care of me.
Right. Yeah, it's a circular reasoning type thing, when in reality, and I go back again, that if we go back to the premise of my book, which is money temperament is the crux, is the problem and the solution. What I mean by that, it's the problem in the sense that we're all wired a little different with money, and as humans, we're not good at long-term planning. We're not good with numbers. We rationalize anything, and we're just always very human with our money. But on the other hand, if you understand that and accept that up front, that you have a unique money temperament, and part of that money temperament is your relationship with money, which could be good or bad, that's not the point. You need to know what it is, and then you have to take positive, proactive steps as the business owner of you to manage that temperament or your behavior and make sure it's aligned with your values. If you don't do that, it's all going to fall apart. But here's the crux. We don't teach this. We don't talk about this. From what I can tell right now, this is the only book in the country that is talking about the behavioral piece of financial security, or the ones that are out there are so technical and medical and analytical, nobody's going to read them unless you've got a PhD in behavioral finance. What I wanted to do was give a book that you could read, take notes, carry it with you, and here's an aside. I found out that if you just carry that book with you in your purse in a consequential buying decision, the fact that you have that book with you will make you a better spender. But it's also an opportunity for you to give this book to your daughter, because she's at the age that she understands spending. She understands what the mall is, and you've got to get her prepared for her senior year and the year after that, and the time to do it is now. So the book, in my opinion, is written for somebody like yourself and your family, and obviously you're better than this than most. Mm-hmm. But we've got to well, I know you are. And I can tell and listen to you some of the frustrations you have with the way we deal with money, but I think we've got to launch a revolution. We've got to change the mindset that people are just inherently not good with money. You are accountable and responsible. You're now self-employed. Manage your behavior, then your money. Manage your behavior, then your money. And if you learn how to do that, things are going to be much better.
Oh, yes. Now, we also have the other element, thanks to this whole lockdown, and I'm seeing it more on the Internet, is your Bitcoins and your cryptocurrency vortex. Yes. I'm like, okay, is this stuff for real? Because I'm like, there's no such thing as a guaranteed return.
Exactly. Or I defy you to find somebody to sit down and really explain to me what it is. I mean, it's a fad, and this is another good thing about humans. We tend to chase the shiny, the new, the different, that we like the narrative, we like the story, and it's gone on forever. Back in the 17th century, tulip mania in the Netherlands, where they were taking tulips and making them the equivalent of money. They were the tulips were the tulip bulbs were the bitcoins of the 17th century in Europe. I mean, it's ridiculous. Until somebody finally stood up and said, "They're tulip bulbs." You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And we do this all the time.
Yeah, it's just you can't get a return on something that's guaranteed. You can get a promissory if it makes this, but you're not going to get a guarantee that it's going to make on a $100 investment that you're going to get $3,000 on it.
Exactly. And this goes back to the point you made up that most people just do not understand. Most people don't understand how a checking account works or a savings account works. Say nothing of laddering mutual funds or bonds or derivatives or any of this other stuff that's invented out there by the financial industry to primarily generate fees and commissions for the financial industry. Let's keep that in mind. Altruism is not a focused goal of the industry.
No.
So this is why I keep going back. You're self-employed. You're in charge of you. And if you can't do it yourself, you've got an obligation to surround yourself with experts who do know what they're talking about, that you trust, that understand you, your temperament, and your values, that can help you move forward. And maybe a financial advisor, maybe a coach, maybe a CPA, maybe a trusted friend. But understand what you're good at, then focus on that, and delegate the rest. If I had $1 for every very successful surgeon I've ever talked to that has wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars on stuff they have no business doing, that's the example of humans with money. Just because you're a great surgeon doesn't mean you can run a restaurant.
No, it really doesn't. I went into, I have a friend that's trying to open a restaurant right now, and it's like, you can't budget your own money. How are you going to budget your restaurant's money?
Yeah, how hard can it be? I watch it on television. Which brings up another really kind of interesting point with humans. Reality TV and cable TV has burnt an incredible hole in our pockets. Starting with flipping houses back in 10 years ago, that you could watch a half-hour television show and watch somebody on TV that was not that different than you, that was making millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars on something that looks so simple. Like, all I've got to do is get an old house and put some stainless steel appliances in there, and I'll make $100,000. Well, that's ridiculous. It doesn't work that easy. Or you fill in the blank on what it is. Or I can now become an internet influencer, or I can do fill in the blank. Yeah, there's some people out there that are making a lot of money doing this, but they are the exception. It's just like professional athletes. 1% make it to the pros, and actually make it beyond that. Most people, they're lucky if they get out of high school. So as humans, we've got to get our heads around the fact that we're always, our lazy, dopamine-enhanced emotional brain is always driving us to the stuff that our emotional brain likes, and it may not be the best place to be, particularly when it's an important decision that has long-term consequences and it deals with money. That's when you've got to stop, count to 10, and breathe. Force yourself into that uncomfortable thinking brain piece, and do something just as simple as make a list. When you go buy a car, make a list. When you go to the store, make a list. And that forces you to think deliberately about what you're doing. But we generally don't do that because it's uncomfortable. It takes time. I still wanted to have the stuff I didn't get.
Exactly. We do this every day, subconsciously or consciously. We do it. I'm guilty of it. Going into a bookstore, I'll go to buy one book, and I'll come out with 10 and forget the one book I actually went there for.
Exactly. I love it. Supermarkets. You run into the supermarket, buy milk and bread, and as soon as you go to the supermarket, we take the right-hand turn because that's our culture. We turn right when we go into stores, and the first thing you're hit with is the florist shop, then the deli, then the designer meals, then the expensive meat, and the milk is way in the far end of the store. It's who we
in the
just
back,
because we're human.
Past everything.
Exactly. And here's a little life hack. If you just go into the store and go left instead of right, you'll probably save a lot of money.
Yep. You do.
I love it.
It's perfect sense because you go left, you're going opposite of what you want to go, and you're bypassing all the expensive stuff.
Exactly. And then if you have a list on top of that, most likely you're going to be in and out quicker, which is efficient. You're going to have exactly what you wanted with no distraction. Life is good. Carry on.
Exactly. Well, we're almost out of time, so where can our listeners find you?
TedMcLyman.com is my personal website with my author website. You can also go to DiscoverYourMoneyTemperament.com. That goes to my site also. And those are the best places to find me. I'm also Ted McLyman on all social media. But if you go to tedmclyman.com, that's TEDMCLYMAN.com, that'll take you to the site. I'll give you more information about the book. I've got some videos on there, and then I've got all the social media, Facebook group, YouTube channel. And I am actually looking for people that are interested in this stuff like I am from the emotional point of view, that I want to get out there and just change the narrative about money. We need to understand that money is behavioral, it's emotional, and we're always going to be human. We like stories, we like to confirm, and we do all these crazy things with money because it's our nature. And there's nothing wrong with that. We just need to accept the fact that is our default, and we need to change business as usual if we're going to fix where we are with money for not only this generation, for the next generation.
Exactly. I mean, we have to start looking at money differently. Otherwise, we're in a bad place right now. I mean, seriously.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to say the words that I want to say, but I see it. Even YouTube commercials say we need to start handling money better.
Right, and and when I say, and that's why it was a conscious effort in writing this book to make it a consumer book. It's a leadership book. It's not a book about money. Your listeners have to understand. This is a book about personal leadership, to have your act in order, to understand how you relate with money so you can take better choices. And then it's broader leadership to take care of the people you care about, your family, and your organization. It's not about money. It's about choices. And I want to get people behind this movement to start holding the financial services industry accountable for what they're doing. We need to talk about behavior. And when I dream at night about this book, I want people taking my book and go into their financial planner and go, do you do this? And I hope whoever he or she is says, of course I do, because I want to deal with you based from a behavioral focus, not just sell you stuff. Mm-hmm. I think we can do it.
We can. So let's go out, buy the book, read the book, and then let's have some open dialogue about it, because there's so
I'd
many
love
things.
to. I'd love to.
Yeah, there's so many things that need to be changed, and it all starts with ourselves.
Yep. Yeah, that's the hardest piece of accountability.
It is. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was wonderful having you.
I've enjoyed it. This has been fun, and good luck to you and your daughter. Whenever her senior year starts, I assume you'll have one next year. And let's do this again, and maybe follow up and figure out what we got to do to get this ball rolling.
That would be great. Thank you so much.